Hey guys, it's day 3 of the NSRA Street Rod Nationals in Louisville, Kentucky. If you haven't seen my previous 2 videos, I encourage you to go check those out. But let's get right into the action from day 3. The first thing I saw this morning was this awesome Winnebago, which has been converted into a ramp truck. So it still has living quarters, it's still, functional in that way, but it also has room to put a hot rod on the back. And this thing's got a killer Model A coupe on there. It's chopped and channeled. Awesome car, awesome ramp truck. It even has a custom decal that says Rampabago. This is a cool combination. The next thing that got my attention was this 1933 Plymouth. Now this doesn't look like a 33 Plymouth. There's not a whole lot of Plymouth left. This is a really old school hot rod that was likely built in the 60s or 70s. It's got an Oldsmobile engine in it. It's got some vintage speed parts, those fin aluminum valve covers, 2 4s, open headers with some dump pipes. Really cool combination. Now this thing is definitely old school. It's got some 5-spoke wheels on it. It's got this wild front end setup where the spring is actually in front of the axle, sort of like the way it's built on a 40 Ford. All that stuff's chrome plated. You can see that the doors have been filled in. This custom interior is just absolutely old school as it gets. And you can see that it's been patched up a little bit here and there. You can see these spots of primer, the old school taillights. This thing is definitely stuck in the past, but it's definitely a piece of street rodding history. I also checked out the Straight Axle Mafia, which was on display inside the vendor building. They had their own little parking spot there, a cool selection of old school gassers. Now this is a really interesting one. It's not a hot rod, but I guess you could consider this a factory hot rod. This is a 1958 Packard, and if you're thinking it looks like a Studebaker, that's because Studebaker bought Packard in the late 1950s, and they built these cars, a very limited production. This is a 1958 Packard, and you can see inside of there that's a 289 cubic inch V8 with a centrifugal supercharger. This is just absolutely top of the food chain when it comes to super rare, pretty desirable cars. I mean, I guess a supercharged 57 Ford is probably more desirable, but this car, to me, when it comes to orphan cars and things like that, it doesn't get a whole lot better. You can see the trim on the back of this thing. It's got these inserts in the fins. It's got all sorts of cool extra stuff compared to a Studebaker of that same model. And if you look inside, you can see a padded dash, and there's even leather-wrapped pads that run across the tops of the doors. A really nice touch. You can see a lot of really high-end details on this car, but it didn't work. There were only 588 of these things built, and this is number 406 out of those. And this is just an extremely rare example, a very nicely restored example. And, it's just one of those cars that you don't see very often. And even though this is a street rod event, this thing got a lot of attention throughout the weekend. Next on my list is a 1966 Chevrolet Biscayne. This is a pretty special one. It only has 1,505 miles on it. It's all matching numbers, and it's never been licensed on the street. It's radio delete, heater delete. It is stripped down except for the fact that it has a 427 cubic inch, 425 horsepower big block under the hood. You can see the vintage Krager front runners on there, and then all the hand lettering. That's all old school stuff. Even the craned cams, that's not a decal. That's actually hand lettering. So that's really cool. Lots of cool details on this thing, and it is very well preserved. You can see the 2-door post body style. That's a really cool stripped down car with Chevrolet's biggest and best engine option for 1966. This car ran at the 1966 Spring Nationals. The car was basically brand new, and then later raced at the 1968 Winter Nationals. So this thing got around, and it was a former B stock NHRA record holder for speed and lapse time. When we look inside, we can see an old racing helmet and a fire jacket, and there's even a picture inside of here, a framed picture that shows what this car looked like back in the day. It rained off and on throughout the day, but when the show was over, the skies cleared out, and it was great atmosphere for cruising. Again, no burnouts or anything like that that I could see. I could hear some off in the distance, but for the most part, it was some pretty calm cruising. Still a lot of fun out here on the street.